Marcus Ely here for Status Coup. Currently, I'm in front of the Chevron gas station at the corner of Martin Luther King and Bonanza. And this was the site where Byron Williams was pulled over initially, stopped on a routine traffic stop. He didn't have his bicycle properly lit, so the police pulled him over. And then they eventually chased him into some apartments where he was later killed. I sat down with Nisa Sung, who has been covering this for the Force Trajectory Project. She is the founder and editor in chief over at the Force Trajectory Project, and she's in contact with the family, and she's given me the full rundown of what's going on thus far. Can you start with how the incident happened first?
So Byron Williams, who's an African American, 50-year-old African American, he had been dropped off at that location because he doesn't live in that neighborhood. He went there to visit his son, who lived close by, and his spouse and fiance of 35 years dropped him off. As he was riding his bike, Las Vegas Metro Police Department, there was I think maybe one cop cruiser. They turned their sirens on. They're trying to pull him over. The reason why is because they alleged that he didn't have safety lights on his bike, and I guess it was kind of dark out. It was like 5 a.m. And so he ends up driving into the Chevron gas station on the corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard and West Bonanza, and he ditches the bike and he just starts running. And so these officers pull into the gas station. I think at this point maybe there was another cruiser. I'm not sure. I'm not sure at what point, how many were on foot, pursuing him. He ended up jumping over a wall that divided the gas station from an apartment complex, and he just kept running. And then once they catch up to him, they order him to get on the ground, which he does. He totally complies. And once they approach him, they jump on his back. I think it's 2 officers at this point. You can see them both on top of him. And just from the body cam footage, I can't say how large the cops were, but they seemed like pretty big dudes. And Byron looked tiny compared to them. And there's 2 really heavy cops, basically 400 pounds of officer on his back, And at that point, you immediately start hearing him gasping for air, saying, I can't breathe. And the officers are giving each other they're not giving each other high fives, but they're they're doing the elbow thing or whatever, and then they're totally not responding, they're just ignoring his pleas. And then they end up trying to stand him up, and he's clearly not able to stand on his own. He's almost he's super limp, and then they're dragging him, and that's when the body cam turns off, from what they're showing us. However, the family was able to view several different cameras. I think 3 or 4 cameras, because there were 7 officers there at that point. And so there should be 7 cameras. I know that they saw 3 or 4 cameras. And what they said was that after they dragged him for several feet, they put him back on the ground face down. And why would you do that when, this man's trying to breathe, But they put him face down on the ground again. And I think they might have continued pressuring, pinning him to the ground, at which point the family says that he was still gasping for air, still crying for help. I can't breathe. And then the family says that they heard the officers laughing. There's one female officer that you can hear her say, I think he's probably crying for help, and her response is, don't even worry about that. No one's coming for you. I think that's what she says. And then at some point, and the officers are standing around talking about their weekend, totally not even responding to the fact that this man is barely breathing. And then finally, one of the officers says, oh, is he breathing? I don't know if he's breathing, and then they kind of try to touch his back to see if he's responsive. And then the cameras go out. The family literally was just it's like a scary movie. Just all the cameras went out for no reason, nobody knows why. And then the next thing they see is the camera being turned back on, and Williams is laying on his back and lifeless pretty much, and EMTs there with gloves trying to give him CPR. And at that point, the sun's up, so we don't really know how much time had passed from the time that they turned off the cameras to the time that they turned them on. So yeah, so that's basically the scenario that we know so far.
So one thing the LVMPD has consistently bragged about and stated since, of course, the FBI had to come in and help them do their reform deal that they did, has been that they're forthright with all of the body cam information and they show it immediately. Normally, they have been somewhat okay at getting the information out. I want to ask you two questions about that, though. Number one, is that the case in this case? And number two, do you think that they're trying to get it out to be honest, or they're trying to get it out to put their spin on it ahead of the media getting a hold to it and coming to their own conclusions?
I think it's interesting, the reform, because I've seen a couple of other websites kind of talk about how Metro's become a national model for reform, and mainly what they're getting kudos on is the fact that they have a YouTube channel, the fact that they have social media, the fact that they have, that they actually put this stuff out. But the honest truth is that all the videos I've seen and how they get ahead of the game in terms of the narrative and really establish their narrative is not, it's very, very manipulative. I mean, they prime their audience for what they see. So, for example, in the case of Junior Lopez, that happened in 2018, last year, April 6th, it was a traffic stop. And, they claim their official story is that Junior had a gun, picked it up, and pointed it at the officers, which prompted the officers to shoot. And when the officer is explaining this video, it's like there is no gun in his hand. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like they take advantage of people's auditory senses and priming them before they see the video. And then they're like, see, there's the gun. They even circle it, and it's like this blurry hand and you don't see anything in it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think Metro is very honest. I think they try to cover their tracks in terms of PR and everything like that. But I think what's happening is the journalists, the media is not really looking deeper into what they need to do, because what's happening is they're getting away with this great PR. And what's really happening is stuff is being redacted, videos are being edited. There's probably more than one angle that they're not showing. Why? For what reason? Right? And so, for example, for this case, I mean, there were 7 officers there, right? I mean, roughly 7, right? Well, there should be 7 different angles. Why aren't we able to see all those different angles, right? Why did the family get to see? And of course, the family should, of course, get to see it, but why were they privy to 3 or 4 body camera angles, and why was the public not? You know what I mean? I think everybody should be able to see it, right?
When did the family see this?
So what happened was on Thursday morning, and this is something I have to research more because I'm not sure exactly what the protocol is in terms of is there protocol in terms of reporting, police-related fatalities? I know they have a protocol for officer-involved shootings. Officer-involved shootings are supposed to do a press briefing within 72 hours, right? But usually in these cases we've seen is that within hours, there's there was an officer-involved shooting on the corner of blah, blah, blah. We don't have any names yet, more details to come, right? We didn't hear anything about this case for over 100 hours, which is that's a lot of time to go by. Why didn't you say anything?
And how did the mainstream media, such as the RJ and Channel 3, who did the press briefing and whatnot, how did all these other outlets find out about it?
So what happened was there was an eyewitness, and the eyewitness contacted the family on Thursday, right after it happened. The family was like, well, we're going to call the morgue. We're going to call the coroner's office to see if Williams is there. The coroners confirmed that the body was there. So when Metro called the family, the Force Investigations Unit, that was Friday. So already a day had gone by. And then they brought in the family to see body cam footage Saturday morning. And so
2 whole days went by before a family gets to see the body cam footage.
Exactly. And then, so yeah, exactly. Like, why is all this time? What are you doing in that time? Right? Like, especially when you're trying to say that you're a transparent organization, like, no murderer would be allowed to stay at the crime scene for 2 whole days and be like, oh, okay, you know, and now you can come investigate, right? Like, that doesn't make sense, right?
And then on top of that, not only can you come investigate, but my homie's gonna come investigate. Like,
exactly. My best friend, my best man at my wedding is gonna come investigate and basically say, you know, no, I didn't do it or whatever, you know. So that's basically what's happening. And so, I mean, I think if Metro was really about transparency, they would have reported this to the family immediately. They wouldn't wait for an eyewitness to contact them or somebody else or the media to contact them. If they were really about transparency and accountability for their own, you know, officers, they would have notified the family right away. And we've seen this time and time again as a pattern throughout the nation, but definitely also with Metro. And so when I got tagged on a social media post, and you know, social media has played a huge role in reporting police use of force cases, you know, because now everybody's online. Your grandma's online, you know what I mean? And so that's made us as a public a lot more connected to the people that this happens to. And so I got tagged and I was just like, wait, what's going on? And I thought it was like an old case at first. I was just like, what? I kept looking. I was like, is there media on this? What is going on? I hit up the family member that had mentioned, you know, him seeing his stepfather. His name is Jeffrey Tompkins. He's the brother of Kelly Williams, who is the blood daughter of Byron Williams. And so we spoke, and he sent me to his sister's house, where I met Carmen, the fiance, the partner of 35 years, Carmen Scott, Gwen Lewis, who's Byron's older sister, Tina Acree, who's the niece, and Kelly Williams, who's the daughter. And so, you know, I was with them for several hours. I interviewed them thoroughly, you know, got basically what they were saying. And then I went and interviewed Jeffrey at the scene. And then after that, I wrote, you know, Force Trajectory broke the story with ACAB Radio. And then I sent out a press release Sunday afternoon. And that's the only reason why mainstream knows about it. That's the only reason why. Because if I had just written the article and ACAB posted the interview of Jeffrey, it would have just been on social media. Like, that means that media would have had to have been connected to us somehow to be like, oh wait, something happened here. So that's why I sent out the press release, because I was like, there's no way they're going to know about it unless I send it to them directly, you know. And so then I started getting phone calls from the time I sent it, like literally the minute I sent it to even now, I'm still getting phone calls now, you know. So yeah.
Transitioning to the media getting the information, we were talking a little earlier, and we were talking about how the media seems to actually be doing their job somewhat. In this case, like we noticed when we saw the press conference, there were a lot of questions about the body cams being cut off. Now, normally what happens is, especially in Las Vegas, is the local media tends to be basically stenographers for them. In this case, they haven't been. Do you think that has something to do with the family raising their voice and sounding the alarm the way that they have?
Absolutely. I mean, in these cases, this is all about the control of the narrative. You know, in police homicide cases and excessive use of force cases, it's always about who tells the story first, because everybody knows that the story you hear first is a story that's going to stick in your mind, you know, and you might come back with redactions later. People aren't going to remember that, you know, and that's sad, but that's the truth. You know, people look at headlines, they look at surface, you know, whatever comes first. And on top of that, also, because police are authority figures and institutionalized, and mainstream journalism is also authority and institutionalized, and they work together, the official story is usually the police narrative. And so the family and the eyewitnesses are usually marginalized. Their voices are marginalized. They're not heard. Sometimes they're not even interviewed, which is ridiculous. I mean, eyewitnesses not interviewed. I mean, that's scary. Like in a homicide case, you know, internal affairs, you're supposed to be interviewing eyewitnesses. And, you know, for the short time that we've been doing work in this town, we've seen a number of cases where eyewitnesses are not even interviewed by media or the police. And it's like, what is going on here? You know, how are you guys nobody's being held accountable for this? Like, do your job, you know?
That's supposed to be the point of the Fourth Estate, in that you hold those in power accountable. That's why we do this. And honestly, I've said it on camera before, that's why I took a letter grade in a certain class that we won't talk about at UNLV, but the teacher told me that I was to remain non-biased in cases of Black death. And I was just like, that's not possible. They are killing us. Yeah, no, it's not possible at all, especially as a Black man. You know what I mean? Like, no, they're killing people like me. I have to live in this and navigate through this. I'm not, as a journalist, I'm definitely going to carry that with me, and that's going to come through in my reporting, in that we tell these stories and we talk to the families. And you notice I'm not sitting here with a police officer. I'm sitting here with somebody that's been with the family, that has been in this community doing the work, that has the background, has the expertise, has what you would call the ethos in this situation. You know what I mean? So, and given that you had that, that's a good segue to, based on you doing this work and having seen these situations, and I'm going to try to edit the wind out, but it's probably going to be here. Sorry. But yeah, being that you have seen these situations many times before, and you've done this work for quite a while now, what's your take on what needs to happen in the next coming weeks, to get, in this case in particular, to get some kind of justice for the families?
Well, I mean, I don't know if justice is possible in the system, to be honest with you, but if we want to see change in how Nevada police Nevada, we're going to have to see, the community has to come out. The community has to come out. The family has to. So it's hard to ask a family who's grieving and who's going through probably the worst moment of their life to be at the forefront. But essentially, if we want all the pieces to come together, that's what needs to happen. They need to be at the forefront. The community needs to be behind them. They need to be in concert working together. Mainstream media needs to do their job, excuse me, and come out and come to these, if there's going to be a march or a rally or a vigil, they need to be coming out and following and documenting these events. They need to be basically a beacon for the community voice, because, come on, like you said, they've been stenographers for the police department. Like, they're just doing their PR for them all the time, right? So it's like, now it's time to like be the beacon for the community, that needs to happen. Further down the line, legislators need to get involved. We're talking about elected officials. I mean, elected officials represent the people, right? Supposedly, right? So if you're a constituent and this happened in your district, well, you need to be out there with the people. You need to be out there with the constituents and be, hey, one of our community members got killed in my district. Is that okay with me? And the community needs to be knocking on these legislators' doors and be like, hey, this is not okay with us, So
just to kind of stop you for just a second, I believe that is Congressional District 4, that area, CD4. That would be Stephen Horsford would be the congressional rep out there. So he got in and beat the Our Revolution Justice Democrat candidate, Amy Villela. So we'll see what happens there. He happens to be establishment, but he's also a Black man. So we'll see. I hope. I'm not going to bash on him now, but look, we got to bring him to the table. He has the power. He represents this district. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be canvassing, calling him, just like flooding his voicemail, flooding his email. Hey, did you know this happened? This is your territory. You need to respond. You need to be there to support the people,